Hallole und grüß Gottle, ich bin Chris vom Podcast Erlebnis Irland. Ich bin Podcaster, Reiseblogger und Fotograf. Zusammen mit meiner Frau Felicitas geben wir euch Tipps zum Reisen in und nach Irland. Heute dürfen wir euch zur 10. Episode unseres Reisepodcasts begrüßen, zusammen mit Cauley von der Titanic Experience in Belfast. Es gab eine Zeit, da war Belfast zusammen mit Beirut, Bagdad und Bosnien einer der gefährlichsten Orte der Welt für Reisende, zumindest laut Lonely Planet. Einer der Plätze, um die man am besten einen großen Bogen machen sollte. Aber mit Beginn des Friedensprozesses in den 90er Jahren des letzten Jahrhunderts hat sich das geändert. Nach dem Bürgerkrieg lag die Wirtschaft in Belfast da nieder. Auch auf dem Gelände der ehemals erfolgreichen Werft Harland und Wolff, die damals 1912 oder bis 1912 die Titanic gebaut haben. I thought I knew all there was to know about Titanic, but that was before I became involved in Titanic Belfast. Das sagte Robert Ballard, der amerikanische und bekannte Unterwasserarchäologe. Er entdeckte 1985 das Wrack der Titanic in über 5000 Meter Tiefe. Später auch das Wrack des deutschen Schlachtschiffs Bismarck. Im Jahr 2000 erbrachte er den Beweis, dass das Küstengebiet im Schwarzen Meer an der türkischen Küste unter Wasser bereits besiedelt war, beziehungsweise dass da Reste von Siedlungen existierten, was eine Überschwemmungstheorie dann dort bestätigt. Vielleicht hat er damit sogar Atlantis entdeckt, wer weiß. Robert Ballard weiter, Titanic belongs to Belfast. I'm very pleased that the city which gave Titanic to the world will now be able to welcome the world to Belfast. Titanic story is infused with romance, pathos, ich hoffe, so ist das richtig, glory, and there is no better place to tell it than in Belfast. Seit der Eröffnung der Titanic, Phil wird sich da nachher nochmal etwas näher damit beschäftigen und euch davon erzählen, sind mehrere Millionen Besucher bereits durch die Hallen oder die Räume der Exhibition gegangen. Von daher gesehen auch eine ziemlich große Erfolgsstory. Aber hören wir uns doch mal an, was Fee und Phil euch zu erzählen haben.
So, wir sind jetzt in der Titanic Experience in Belfast und wir dürfen mit Phil sprechen, eventuell auch Amy, die überlegt sich's noch. Okay, he's going to introduce himself and the museum, and then we go on.
My name is Phil Cauley, and I am part of the visitor experience team at Titanic Belfast. Titanic Belfast opened up on the 31st of March 2012. And in that time, we've had over 3 million guests through the doors. 4 million guests through the doors. It's a fantastic experience, and it's actually, our building is actually built on the birthplace of Titanic. She was built out the back on the slipways on the left-hand side, so we cannot be closer to the actual birthplace. So we have 10 interactive galleries, so it's all self-guided, so the guests can go around at their own time, at their own leisure, so it's entirely up to them. Our first gallery is Boomtown Belfast, and it's all about the industrial growth of Belfast. So we take you back to Belfast over 100 years ago. You'll see boys and girls, young, no socks and shoes on. So socks and shoes back then were quite a luxury. We'll go back into the linen industry, where it all started in Belfast in the turn of the 17th and 18th century, where Linenopolis, as Belfast became known as, and the growth of Belfast and the growth of shipbuilding. Then we've got the history of the White Star Line, how it came about, and then into immigration. Why were these huge vessels being constructed? There was 2 main lines. There was the White Star Line and there was the Cunard Line. The Cunard Line had the American lines, while the White Star Line was concentrating on the Australia route. And White Star Line basically wanted to get in a piece of the action as such. Then we'll come to the original gates of Harland and Wolff, and then into the drawing offices. Now the drawing offices is actually the hotel, just the Titanic Hotel right beside us, and you'll see how the plans were drawn out on white linen sheets. So we have crew members there that will bring the stories to life for all age groups, from very small children. We get a lot of school groups coming as well, primary school groups, and we bring them back to that time when it was there was no iPads, there was no computers, there was no watches were even a luxury back then. And when we tell them that going through a day to day without any socks and shoes on, they get quite a shock. Then we'll come to the aerial gantry, which was the scaffolding of the ship, what surrounded her during construction. We'll make our way up to level 4, where you'll hear stories about what work was like. In fact, I met a gentleman a few years ago, and he started in the shipyard at the age of, he was 13 years old and 3 months, and he started work. He was no longer a boy, he was considered a man. And he was very, very small. He had a flat cap on him, and he had all these red dots round his eyes. And he said to me, "Do you know where I got these red dots?" And I questioned him, "What happened? How did this happen?" And he said, "Whenever I was working on the steel and with the sharp bits of steel coming out, I always kept a very sharp needle in my cap." And I wondered, why would you have a sharp needle in your cap? And he said, basically, if a bit of steel came out and caught me in the eye, I would take out the sharp needle, I would pass it to my colleague, and he would chip it out, and work continued. Bringing back the reality of how harsh and tough work was back then. Then on the rest of level 4, we'll come to the shipyard ride. It's a 5-minute ride that gives you an idea of the conditions of a shipyard worker. So it's a wee cable car ride, and it takes you down, and you'll see the sounds, the sights and the smells of what it was like on the shipyard working there over 100 years ago. It's excellent, and people don't ever expect to have like a cable car ride in a museum or in an experience like we have today. Then up into the launch gallery, we'll go through launch day. Over 100,000 people lined the banks of Belfast to come and see Titanic being pushed into the water. She was the heaviest floating vessel at that time, and in fact the most expensive as well. After the launch gallery, you've got a reconstruction of the first, second, third class cabins, so you'll see exactly what the level of luxury. Titanic, there was no ship built like her in the entire world. So nobody had seen this level of luxury, to having telephones in your first class cabins that you could reach the bridge and the telegraph office. Your best first class ticket in today's money would probably set you back 100,000 euros each for 1 week's ticket. The ladies would have a room for their maid, the gentlemen would have a room for their valet, and some rooms even had their own private promenade. You'll see the second class cabin. Well, Wallace Hartley, the band leader, the conditions that he would have stayed in, and he's the gentleman that was made famous playing the violin right to the very, very end. And a few years ago, we actually had his violin on display. It was lent to us by a private investor. So some of the artifacts that we have in the exhibition are from that time. We have Perry's watch. He was the chairman of Harland and Wolff. We have a letter from... Who's the letter from? I can't remember. Hart? Eva Hart. We have a letter from Eva Hart. I did well. We also have the original Trade of Board inquiry plan as well, where over 25,000 questions were answered. And then into the promenade deck. What I like about the promenade deck is we actually have an original lunch menu. So
cool.
You can see what they actually ate. Now, back then, as I tell visitors today, there's no big cinemas, there's no TV shows today. So one of the main things that they did was eat. This was the old art of conversation, when people actually had to talk to each other. And you'll see even dinner could be up to 11 courses long. But you'll see exactly what they ate and the kind of food that the high class would have ate over 100 years ago. Then one of the most poignant galleries is into the sinking gallery at the very end of level 4. It gets darker, it gets colder, and the voices we hear in there are the actual voices of survivors, of people who were actually on board the vessel. Now, from time to time, we get a lot of people coming in whose families have worked in the shipyard, and it brings back memories to them. And sometimes we get very, very elderly gentlemen who worked in the shipyard, maybe the 1930s, 1940s. But we love to hear the stories from them and from relatives as well, because I always find that the story of Titanic Belfast is like a huge jigsaw. We'll never know it all, but every single day somebody will come along and add another piece to the jigsaw, and we'll as crew through the galleries, we'll pass on those stories. We had Violet Jessop's niece, who was an exceptionally elderly lady. She must have been well into her 80s. She was here recently, and Violet Jessop was a maid on board Titanic. She survived, and she was also on the Olympic, and she was able to tell me a story about how her brothers gave her a hard time about surviving the Titanic, nearly making fun of it, that she was bad luck. And they told her when she was on the Olympic, make sure you don't forget your toothbrush. Oh. And she kept her toothbrush in her maid's apron. And whenever she survived the sinking of the Olympic, so that's the sinking, when it hit her torpedo of the Olympic, she was able to pull out, she was able to tell her brothers, I didn't forget my toothbrush, and she still had it on her. So even though it was exceptionally serious, there was a lightheartedness to some of the stories as well. At the very end of level 4, we'll go down to level 3, which is the trade of board and inquiry plan. So that we have two investigations took place, the US and the UK, and basically what happened and how it's not going to happen again. We'll hear stories from the likes of Bruce Ismay. He was the owner of the White Star Line back then, and he survived. He didn't do the gentlemanly thing as was known back then, as to take a step back and go down with the vessel, and he was hounded by the world's media. He became a recluse and bought a house in Costello in County Galway. And a few years ago I met a lady. She was 87, and she told me she met Bruce Ismay when she was a little girl, to which I was just, the hairs on my arm just raised, that this lady had actually met the owner of Titanic. He said he was a very, very tall man, a very handsome man, and he would come down from the big house every so often with his wife Florence and leave a hard-boiled sweet on the desk of each child in the school. And he also clothed the very poor children in the area as well. So he seemed like a very generous man, but he says he never got over, he never recovered from the sinking of Titanic. And at the very end of level 3, we start to tell the story of Dr. Robert Ballard, the man who found Titanic. How he came across it, what kind of methods he used, and we have a short movie of about 7 minutes long where we watch actual footage of Titanic exactly as she lies in the seabed. My favourite gallery now is down on level 2. I love this gallery, it's fantastic. It's our glass floor, where guests can actually stand above Titanic exactly as she lies on the seabed today. It's 1,500 photographs pieced together. So we encourage children, school children, to actually lie down, look down, and it's like giving that effect of them being in a submarine, and we're able to point out exactly what pieces. And when you see Titanic today, over 100 years later, and how near perfect she still sits there, it's phenomenal. Then our final gallery is all about marine exploration. And we try to, as is in the media recently, as the news recently, there's a lot of emphasis on pollution in the seas with plastics. And with Titanic Belfast, we've been pushing this now since the day we opened, trying to make the young people of today out there to explore, to look after their environment. So it is, in fact, only, I think the last 3 or 4 years ago, it was James Cameron only went down to the deepest part of the world, the Mariana Trenches of Japan, and I think it's over 30% of the world's oceans have still not been explored. So it's up to the next generation to look after our environment, to look after our seas and our water. And this is what our final gallery tries to get through to them as well. We also have, whenever guests are finished the galleries, or if before, the SS Nomadic, which is the tender vessel that brought the first and second class passengers out from Cherbourg in France out to Titanic. Titanic was the biggest boat in the entire world, the biggest ship in the entire world, and it was too big to get into Cherbourg, and Cherbourg was too small, so they built tenders, taxi vessels as such. And it was brought back to Belfast in 2006. They spent over 9 million restoring it to its original glory. In fact, the company that made the portholes was still trading So I was able to go back to the original company and get the original plans and put them on exactly as it sat. So people are able to walk in the footsteps, sit in the seats of the likes of J.J. Astor, Molly Brown, and some of the first class passengers were actually on board the vessel. For the young ones, we have a fantastic children's trail. So it is where they can ask questions throughout the galleries. So they can ask crew questions, they can find out the answers to themselves. And we have our characters throughout. So we have Molly the linen. Is it Molly? Is her name? No. I think Molly's her name. We'll call her Molly. So we find her in Linonopolis, and then we have the characters finding the captain. And we trying to make them into Titanic thinkers, that they'll ask the crew more questions, and they'll go away and they'll explore it themselves. I know in some of the school syllables in Northern Ireland, Titanic is actually on their syllable. So it's bringing the story back to life, bringing it back that we're taking ownership. A lot of people know about Titanic. They don't necessarily know that it was built in Belfast, but now's their time to come to Belfast, to visit here and to explore the wonders of Titanic Belfast and surrounding areas.
How much time should they take with them?
I would suggest I suggest about an hour and a half, 2 hours to do the entire galleries. But your times, it's entirely up to yourself. So some people take a little bit slower. Some people can be here for the entire day. I remember one year we had a lady and she spent 3 days in the galleries. She was a complete Titanic, as we call ourselves. And she just loved it, just couldn't get enough of it. And she came the 4th day and actually brought her friend. So we nearly gave her a job.
Sorry, my voice. So, how many people work here for Titanic exhibition?
We have, in the exhibition itself, we have very, very many departments when it comes to visitor services down below. They'll process your ticket for you. And then we have our groups desk. We get a lot of groups coming in from all over the world. So we have Belgium, Italy, France, Germany, you name it. And it's great to meet these people from countries you haven't met before. I always say, recently I met a lady from Togo in Africa, and I was like, I've never met anybody from Togo in Africa. I can't say that again, and I shook her hand. We have our crew throughout the gallery, so we have like 21 crew in today in the galleries, and they're there to interact and to chat with the guests and to bring the stories to life. Then we have a large casual pool we can work with. We have the marketing department who do a fantastic job here at Titanic Belfast, especially Amy. She's one of our best. We also have the finance department. We have the groups department. We have retail. We have the store where guests can come in and they can purchase key rings to Irish linen to jewellery to hats to caps. It's all there Titanic related. And then we have our fantastic outlets for something to eat. There's the Bistro 401, named after the ship number of Titanic, number 401. We have the galley, and we have our new basically outdoor event space called Hickson's Point. It is recently just opened, and it does live music. You can get a nice bowl of Irish stew, a good pint of Guinness, or a nice glass of Sauvignon Blanc. And basically it's bringing the story of Robert Hickson. Robert Hickson was the first man to build ships on Queen's Island, as this area is called, Queen's Island. And not a lot is known about him. So we've gone back in time again, back to the early 1850s, and bringing that story of Robert Hickson back to life. So any guests are coming in and they want to experience a true Northern Irish welcome, then we also recommend Hickson's Point.
Mm-hmm. Amy told us before that you can also have a wedding here.
Yes, we've had weddings. We've our rooms upstairs. We have we have 4 suites upstairs. Our Titanic suite, where we have the grand staircase. And I always think, if you're having a wedding, then no better backdrop for the bride and groom to actually walk down the stairs. So out of the Titanic suite, we have the Olympic suite.
No, we don't use the Olympic suite for weddings. It's only Titanic and Rose Gallery and
Pneumatic. So we can have it on the Titanic suite. We can have it in the Andrews Gallery down here on level 2, named after Thomas Andrew, who's one of the chief designers. We get a lot of his family come in. His family are still going strong there in Cumber, which is about maybe 20 miles down the road. And it's always great to chat to them, to hear their stories. And also we can have weddings on the Nomadic, which is fabulous when you kind of think you can actually have your big day on a vessel over 100 years old, and you'll be treated as first class. So you will.
Sounds good. Your most sold souvenirs. Your most sold souvenir. You know?
In the retail store, I think it's fridge magnets. I think it's our number one. We internally we have information is sent out. I don't know. I would need to speak to somebody in the retail side of things. But I know, speaking personally, anywhere I go, I don't leave without a fridge magnet. So whether it's the Giant's Causeway or in Mallorca, I have to come home with a fridge magnet.
Okay.
You do a lot of other activities I've seen in the web, workshops and things like that, stuff like that.
Yeah, we do education workshops. So we work very closely with a number of schools. We have our abandoned ship workshop. We work with primary schools, which would be aged from 4 to about 10 or 11, and we have the real life lifeboats as such, very similar to the ones on the wall there, where they get a list of stuff that's in the lifeboat and what would be the most important and why they have chosen it, to whether it's a fishing rod, a lighter, fuel, a wetsuit. So we work with that there. We also go back to the old signals of the flag signals of the ships before basically telecommunications. Back then it was all telegrams with Marconi, and in the using of the flags today, well, now it's all GPS. And we do guided tours with primary schools as well. We do a guided tour called My Grandpa's Peace Tin, where they get dressed up in the flat caps so they can, and we bring them back to being a shipyard worker 100 years ago. And there's a bit of storytelling and a bit of songs. We sing a few songs as they go around the galleries, but the highlight for the primary schools is always the shipyard ride and the glass floor.
And also other events, exhibitions and concerts, or?
Yes, well, outside on the slipways, just this weekend, we were privileged to host the Radio 1 big weekender. Radio 6 big weekender. So we had Friday big weekend.
BBC big weekend.
BBC big weekend, and I think it was over 17,000 on the Friday and the Saturday night. So with some big headline acts. So it was and. This is basically, there's no Glastonbury, which is the big music festival in England. So this is their big music festival. So a lot of guests travelling over from the UK and from other countries into Belfast, just specifically to see these acts. So that was absolutely fabulous. I mean, the hotels in Belfast, no doubt, did a thriving trade over the weekend.
So now the Titanic is again very important for the economics in Belfast, no?
Yes, I'd say I would. With the amount of guests that are coming through our doors, and with our VE crew, we try to push other. They ask us our opinion. What shall we go visit next? What shall we go and see? And we've also lots of other tourist attractions in Northern Ireland. We tell them how to get there. We tell them, what attractions to actually go and visit in Belfast, where to stay, and we get also a lot of questions about the nightlife. Where's the best place to go for a good pint of Guinness?
Which is?
and the Belfast crack. But we always say, if you're here during the day, we'll go out to Hickson's Point. You can't go wrong there. But if you're heading out into Belfast at night, we always recommend the Cathedral Quarter, the cobbled streets. So it is, you go back in history there, so and you'll definitely pick up a fantastic cocktail and enjoy yourself.
Your favourite site in Belfast next to Titanic Experience?
My favourite in Belfast is actually I love the Crumlin Road Jail. I love that experience. Just outside, we have the Belfast hop on hop off bus, the red bus, and it picks up just outside there. And I always tell guests, if you're planning another tour this afternoon, do the Crumlin Road Jail. They've fully restored it, so they have, and it really brings it back to life, to which you can actually see the hangman's, the gallows, so then the conditions that the prisoners basically stayed in. I'll not tell you too much. I'll not spoil their blog story. I'll not.
Another question?
question: what makes Titanic experience so successful?
I think it's bringing it back to life. Everybody knows Titanic, the word, I think it's the third biggest brand in the entire world. So it is. Everybody knows the word Titanic. You'll pick it up in movies, you'll pick it up in TV shows, you'll pick it up on soap operas, but they don't know that it was built in Belfast. And that's the story that we're trying to tell. We're taking back ownership that it was. A lot of people think it was built in Southampton or built in Liverpool, that it was built here, at the men of Belfast. So it had built this fantastic vessel. Not only Titanic, but the Olympic and of the other thousands or hundreds of boats that were built here. So it's and the Belfast, tourism-wise, I think is relatively. We're still brand new. We're still getting used to all these various different countries coming and visiting us, and it's very, very exciting. We really enjoy it when they come here. I mean, it makes us feel special that people are making the effort to come and visit us here, especially at Titanic Belfast, because we are ambassadors for tourism, not just for ourselves, but for the entire Ireland and where they're going to go next and how best they can enjoy themselves. And they'll pass it on to their friends and family, and hopefully they'll come and visit us as well.
Okay. Thank you for your time and your attention. It was great.
I have a story about the shipyard was owned by Edward Harland and Gustav Wolff. And Gustav Wolff was from Hamburg originally, so he was, and it was his uncle, Gustav Schwab, so he was from Dessau, who financed the buying of the White Star Line in 1867. And basically the reason Gustav Wolff ended up in Belfast, one of the reasons was that his uncle wanted his nephew to keep an eye on his money, on his investment. And one of the main reasons why Gustav Wolff ended up in Belfast as well. But he also owned the rope works over in Collinswater, over in East Belfast, and he made the ropes and then sold them back to himself in the shipyard. So he was definitely a fantastic businessman.
Another question: are there still ships built in Belfast?
There's no ships built in Belfast. The last vessel ever constructed was in 2003, the Anvil Point. In their lifespan, Harland and Wolff had built over 1,750 boats, but now they mainly concentrate on wind turbine and ship repair. There's a cruise ship just further on down, which is being brought in to be repaired at the minute. But I know that the Ministry of Defence and Harland and Wolff are in talks at the minute of trying to bring back shipbuilding into this fantastic area, and it would be brilliant for ourselves and for the economy if once again this trade could also be brought back to life.
Thanks.
Is the Nomadic also built by Harland and Wolff?
Yes, Nomadic was built on slipway number 1. So out the back of our building, you have the two slipways, Titanic on the left, Olympic on the right, and the tarmac area was where slipway number 1 was. But in Titanic's time, there was 13 slipways, so there could be up to 13 boats being built at any one stage. In fact, the ships weren't given their names until after launch day. It just caused too much confusion. They were just known by numbers. So you're working on ship number 1, number 2, number 3, number 12, number 13.
And before the exhibition here was Harland and Wolff, or the territory or the place?
Harland and Wolff Harland and Wolff started in the late 1800s. So it did, taken over by Edward Harland from Robert Hickson, and he paid I'm going to say 1854, not 100%. He paid £5,000 because and he's very young. He's only 23, 24 years of age. He died early 19th century. Gustav Wolff died in 1913, and then it moved on into the various ownership. The Onassis, I think Jackie Onassis, they looked at buying the shipyard at one stage, and now it's owned by the Fred Olsen cruise ship group. That's the ownership of
this
the yard.
area also before the Titanic Quarter.
Oh, this area.
Or was it owned by the city, or?
I'm not 100% on that answer. I'm going to say it could be owned by the Harbour Commissioners or Harland and Wolff. I'm not too sure, but now it's under the control of Titanic Foundation or Titanic Quarter. But Once again, I wouldn't be 100% on that answer. I would have to push on to Titanic Foundation, Titanic Quarter for the ins and outs of the ownerships of the various lands around here. But it's an area that's just growing bigger and bigger. We have the Lighthouse Mews just further on down the road there, which is the oldest lighthouse light. It's 103 years old, and it's our walkway, our Titanic Mile. And then past that we have HMS Caroline from the Battle of Jutland. So it's the second oldest Royal Navy vessel, and then further on past that there we have the Thompson Dry Dock, which is the original dock that Titanic sailed into and the propellers were put onto as well.
Mm-hmm. Are there any changes planned for the Titanic Experience in the next few years?
Every year we take a step back and we look at the galleries and those above me, so we'll decide on refresh. Last year we brought in Lord Perry's actual gold watch. We have that now display up on level 4, so the actual watch that he timed Titanic going into the slipways. We did the launch gallery. We've worked on the shipyard ride. So we'll refresh and we'll make it brand new again. So to bring guests who've maybe been here before to come back and visit something different. We can't tell the entire story. You'd be here for years, so you would. But we try to make you into a Titanic thinker, and with the refreshes and the upgrades, they'll bring you back to tell you a brand new story, something that you haven't learned before.
How long did it take to build Titanic Experience?
The building took 3 years to build, and it was 4 years on the plan, I think, and I know it was the biggest single concrete pour in Europe at one stage, because there's 2 floors beneath the building, and because it's all reclaimed land as well. The architect was a gentleman called Eric Kuhn, and he worked in with Todds of Belfast. He passed away there last year, and actually yesterday I was chatting to his second in command, a lady, name escapes me, and we were chatting about Eric Kuhn and his vision, and he said to me one day, if you can draw it, you can build it. And his vision, and when you look at this building, the building is the White Star Line logo. It's the star, and when it juts out like a ship still going through the water, the architecture is phenomenal. It's absolutely phenomenal, and it's definitely up there in one of the best architectural buildings in the entire world.
Yeah, it looks really good because you just come in front and then you see this huge building and it glitters in the sun. Today is a very sunny day, and it reminds itself as at Titanic at the big ship. When you come there as a peasant and you haven't seen like big skyscrapers like today, it would be it gives already a big impression for us today, but for those people about 100 years ago, it must have been very, very special. Yeah,
whenever you walk up to Titanic Belfast, as soon as you see it, it starts to come to life. Like the height of this building is the same height as Titanic, from keel to boat deck, and when you tell people to look up there and imagine jumping from that height, or being a 15-year-old boy and coming to work and being sent up to those heights with very little health and safety to go to work. So even the approach to our building, it's just jaw-dropping. It's an amazing looking building, and there's so much to see outside and around. Our ground floor is the world's largest map of the Northern Hemisphere. So your story, before you've even stepped into the building, your story has already begun.
Für Fee und mich geht es in der nächsten Woche auch wieder auf Recherchereise rüber nach Irland, und wir haben wieder jede Menge vor, aber wir werden auf jeden Fall Phil fragen, ob es was Neues aus der Titanic Experience zu berichten gibt. Unser erstes Ziel wird tatsächlich nach unserer Ankunft in Dublin Belfast sein. Wenn euch dieser Podcast gefallen hat, dann bewerte uns doch bei iTunes mit 5 Sternen oder lasst uns auch eine gute Rezension da. Es ist schön, dass wir so viele Hörer haben, aber es wäre noch schöner, wenn ihr mal von euch hören lässt, wenn ihr irgendwelche Fragen habt oder wenn ihr zu irgendeinem Thema irgendwas wissen wollt oder wenn ihr einen Beitrag zu einem bestimmten Thema haben wollt, dann schreibt uns einfach. Ansonsten wünschen wir euch einen schönen Tag und eine tolle Reise nach Irland. Macht's gut, euer Chris.